Hey everyone, welcome to Yoga Nidra, or better known as yogic sleep. This is an extremely passive class, so I hope that you're prepared for deep rest and relaxation. We'll begin the practice with a gentle warm-up just to prepare the spine and the pelvis for stillness, especially if you've been sitting a lot during the day. Maybe you were driving in your car, maybe you were very active today, but this practice allows you to experience stillness. And so for that to be the most comfortable for you to be in one position for almost an hour, we do need to release some muscles. So we'll start out on all fours, hands and knees, with the wrists lined up under the shoulders and the knees lined up underneath the hips, coming into a nice neutral pelvis and spine. And here we'll breathe for 10 cat-cows. So inhaling, lengthening through the spine, drawing the shoulders away from the ears. Exhaling and rounding, pressing the floor away with hands and knees. Drop the head, look back. Inhale and lengthen. Exhale, round, pressing the floor away. 8 more at your own pace, with your own breath, taking your time. There is absolutely no rush. Breathing into that release of the spine. You can add in some spirals here of the hips and the shoulders if that feels good for you. Just making sure that you move both directions. Moving and breathing in a way that feels good. Preparing the breath, the body and the mind. And if you're a little bit behind or ahead on the warm-up, that's perfectly fine. We're making our way into child's pose after you finish your 10 breaths, taking the hips to the heels, walking the hands out, and releasing the head down for 10 breaths. Again, your own pace with your own breath. This is a relaxed child's pose, so just allowing the shoulders to drop. You can even take the hands back to the feet and allow the shoulders to sink if that feels better for you. Lengthening through the spine and breathing into that release of the hips. Taking the knees as wide as is comfortable for you. Maybe it feels better to have the knees close together. Just listening to what it is that your body needs. Nice, deep, even inhales and exhales. Inhaling all the way up to the top of the inhales and exhaling all the way down to the bottom. Softening the abdomen on the inhales and relaxing on the exhales. And once you've completed your 10 breaths in your child's pose, making your way into pranamasana, so lying on your belly, supporting your head with your arms and your hands. This is the first choice of your resting postures in Yoga Nidra. So just seeing how it feels to be here, turning your head to one side for 5 breaths, and then turning your head to the other side for 5 breaths. So if you're a stomach sleeper, or if you tend to wake up on your front in the mornings, then this might be a comfortable position for you. during your Yoga Nidra practice. So just exploring how the body and the breath are here. Turning your head to the other side for 5 breaths. Maybe this is really comfortable for you. Maybe this is really uncomfortable. So it's good to kind of see and feel these postures so that when you do settle into your chosen resting posture, you kind of have an idea of what is going to feel good throughout the entire practice so that you don't have to shift positions or move around too much. And once you've completed your 10 breaths in Pranamasana, making your way into Parsvasavasana, or a side lying position. So just shifting yourself to either the right or the left side, whichever is more comfortable for you. The bottom leg stays straight and the top leg crosses over so that the knee, the shin, and the ankle are all supported, allowing the torso to shift forward, supporting the head with the arms and the hands. You can also use a bolster underneath of the head if that's more comfortable. Maybe a blanket or blocks, you decide. And just settling into this side lying position for 10 breaths. This is the second option for your resting posture in Yoga Nidra. So again, if you're a side sleeper, or maybe you wake up in the morning on the side, just seeing how it feels to be here now with the mind consciously aware and awake. It's a very different sensation when you're sleeping versus when you're awake and lying in one position with the mind actively wandering, moving, and being aware. You can always shift to the other side to see how that feels. And once you've completed your 10 breaths on your side, making your way onto your back for bridge pose. So, rolling yourself onto your back, bending your knees and bringing the soles of the feet to the floor. Your feet and your knees are hip width apart. You can tuck the shoulders under slightly, bringing the arms by the sides, palms facing down. And this is not an active bridge pose. We're just preparing the spine and the pelvis for stillness. So pressing your heels into the floor, take a nice inhale in. And as you exhale, lifting the hips up towards the ceiling. And inhaling and releasing. You can squeeze the buttocks or keep it released, you decide. Exhaling the hips up and inhaling the hips down. Just feeling that release of the muscles that support the spine and the pelvis. Gently warming up here. Nice subtle movements, nothing major. Ten breaths here. And once you have finished with your 10 breaths in bridge pose, making your way into traditional Shavasana, so extending the left heel towards the left corner of the mat and the right heel towards the right corner of the mat. Seeing how it feels to be on your back in Shavasana. Moving in your own way and in your own time. Settling into that Shavasana for 10 breaths. Again, just kind of seeing how it feels to be here. The arms can be wherever is comfortable for you. So maybe by the side, maybe resting over the abdomen, maybe over the chest. Whatever feels right for you. This is your third option for your Yoga Nidra practice. If lying on your back is comfortable for you, you may need some extra props to get really comfortable. And after you've completed your 10 breaths in your Shavasana, you'll begin to grab onto your props, your blankets, your bolsters, your pillows, your books, whatever you have to make yourself completely comfortable so that you're warm. The more comfortable the body is, the more that you can rest and release. So once you've completed your 10 breaths in Shavasana, using all of your props to make your little sacred space as warm and comfy as possible. So what I like to do is take a blanket and lie it over top of my yoga mat so that I'm more warm and comfortable. After you're laying on just a yoga mat for an hour, it can be a little uncomfortable as your bones begin to sink down into the mat and into the floor. So for traditional Shavasana, we'll start there. I have an array of bolsters and blocks and blankets. For myself, I like to have a lot of props for Yoga Nidra. So for Shavasana, one of the things that I like to do is put blocks underneath of my feet so that my feet aren't just dangling off of my bolster. So I take the blocks at the end of my mat where my feet will be resting, and then I rest my feet on the blocks, put the bolster underneath of my knees, and then I'll use a bolster that I'll put underneath of my head so that I'm in more of a comfortable position here. If you don't have a pillow that's comfortable for your neck, you can always take a blanket and roll the blanket up to make yourself a little bit of a neck roll here so that the neck is more comfortable. You can take an eye pillow or just a wash rag or maybe a small towel and place that over your eyes, especially if it's daytime and you want a little bit of darkness, or you can close your blinds if you're at home. And if your body temperature has a tendency to drop, which it does during Yoga Nidra because you're still, then you can cover yourself up with a blanket here. I like blankets, so I always cover myself during Yoga Nidra. So just covering yourself up with a blanket, tucking the shoulders under in your Shavasana, and your arms can go wherever you feel the most at ease and at rest. So one of the things that I like to recommend is that you think about the position that you wake up in the morning, not the one that you go to sleep in, because once your body begins to settle and the mind settles, you tend to turn into a position where the body is more comfortable. And typically you wake up in that position. So if you go to sleep on your back, but you wake up on your side, maybe experimenting and exploring with a side lying position as you begin your Yoga Nidra practice. So that's the next one that we'll try here, is a side lying position. And I recommend for your side lying position that you have a really long pillow or maybe a couple of pillows that you can use to rest your top leg on, so that the top leg, the hip, the knee, and the ankle are all in one line. That keeps the pelvis neutral and open so that the pelvis isn't collapsing in on itself and overstretching the sacroiliac joints. So placing a pillow underneath of your knee so that your hip, your knee, your ankle, and your foot are all fully supported and the pelvis is in a nice, more neutral position. From your side lying position, again, you can always cover yourself up with a blanket. You can put some socks on, just making sure that you're warm and comfortable. You can either support the head with the arms and the hands, or you can always use another blanket or a bolster to put underneath of the head. whatever you're doing and whatever you're choosing, you want to be, when I say extremely comfortable, I mean, like you just melt into the support of whatever it is that you have. It kind of feels like you're lying on a cloud, you're being fully supported by the lap of the earth, you're sinking down into the earth, you're floating. It should be extremely comfortable. I know I'm using the word comfortable a lot, but that's what it should be when you're settling into Yoga Nidra. So this is Parsvasavasana, lying on your side. And then that third option, Pranamasana, you can do this one with or without a bolster. So I'll move the bolster to this side. So lying on your front, I like to place my feet on blocks. It just gives me a little bit more support for my knees and my hips. That's just me. You don't have to use blocks here. So without a bolster, you're just resting here. You can put a very thin pillow underneath of the chest and the head, if that feels right for you. You can have the forehead down on the floor, or you can turn it to the side. Just being mindful of overarching the back, but keeping a more neutral spine here. So for me, myself, I prefer when I'm lying in Pranamasana to use a bolster underneath of my hips so that I have a little bit more support for the pelvis, and also so that I feel a nice release from my pelvis to my knees and from my pelvis to my ribs. So I'll show you what that looks like. So taking the bolster underneath of the hips, not under the belly. So it's kind of like the portion of the thighs and the hips are fully supported, and then you're melting the ribs down towards the mat here. It gives me a really nice psoas release, which is something that I tend to feel. I tend to have a really tight psoas. Hip flexors, so I like anything that kind of gives me some support and release here. So this is what my Pranamasana looks like. And then again, you can cover yourself with a blanket here. So choosing any of these resting postures with or without props. So if you don't have bolsters, maybe you can use pillows. If you don't have blocks, maybe you can use some stacked books. Hopefully you have some blankets and you can use as many blankets as you need to get nice and comfortable as you settle in for our Yoga Nidra practice. So choosing your resting posture, taking your time, and I'll join you for the practice.